"Fly that Mi-24 or we die here," Colonel Adrian Holt ordered. 23 trained pilots stood beneath the operations tent, surrounded by radios, flight maps, and the sound of men fighting for their lives 40 miles away. Not one of them moved. Beyond the canvas wall sat a captured Mi-24 Hind, the armored Soviet gunship NATO crews called the Flying Tank. Its labels were written in Cyrillic. Its maintenance history was a mystery. Its original pilot was dead, and the only American who had examined its controls was lying unconscious in the field hospital. Then a 56-year-old woman in a dust-covered intelligence uniform raised her hand. For 1 second, the tent was silent. Then someone laughed. Another pilot joined him. A few men looked away, embarrassed for her. Major Kellen Price, the squadron's operations officer, stared at the woman as if she had volunteered to stop the war with a pocket knife. "Ma'am," he said, "the colonel asked for a pilot." The woman met his eyes. "I heard him. Welcome to Warthog Valor Stories. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today?" 47 minutes earlier, Colonel Holt had been watching 11 blue symbols trapped inside Darya Gorge. They belonged to Raven Team, sent to recover an engineer named Samir Dalan, and the evidence he carried of planned attacks on 3 civilian airports. The team had found him, then the enemy had surrounded them. Now 2 soldiers were wounded. The southern road was blocked, and their ammunition would last perhaps half an hour. The radio hissed. "Falcon Ridge, Raven Actual. We have movement on the eastern shelf. At least 30. They're bringing up a heavy gun." Gunfire cracked behind the voice. Holt leaned toward the microphone. "Raven Actual, hold the quarry. Air extraction is being organized." There was a pause. "Sir, with respect, organize faster." The transmission ended beneath a burst of static. Holt looked toward his aviation commander. "Black Hawks?" Major Price shook his head. He was 38, broad-shouldered, and known for landing helicopters in places other pilots refused to consider. Both flyable aircraft took shrapnel in the fuel cells during the morning attack. "Maintenance needs 6 hours. The Chinook? Gearbox chip warning. Grounded. Allied support? Weather closed their pass. Earliest arrival is 90 minutes. Raven Team had nowhere near 90 minutes. Cloud and blowing dust made a jet strike too dangerous. One mistake would kill the people they were trying to save. At the back of the operations center, Evelyn Mercer listened. Everyone knew her as a quiet civilian intelligence analyst who translated captured flight logs. They saw her reading glasses and silvering hair. They did not see the former Chief Warrant Officer 5, who still checked every helicopter's rotor head and tail whenever she walked past. Holt's radio operator raised his voice. "Sir, new transmission from Raven." The speakers filled with breathing wind and the flat percussion of a machine gun. "Falcon Ridge, Sergeant Nunez is hit. We've stopped the bleeding, but he needs surgery. Enemy is inside 800 meters. Holt closed his eyes for half a second. "Understood. Keep the northern wall between you and the eastern. Shelf. That buys us 20 minutes. Then I'll be there in 19, Holt." Released the microphone before anyone could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Evelyn calculated the distance and wind, then looked through the tent flap toward the only aircraft nobody had mentioned. The captured Mi-24 had been flown across the border 12 days earlier by a defector who died before explaining its condition. Mechanics repaired its landing gear and drained contaminated fuel, but no one at Falcon Ridge was authorized to fly it. Evelyn walked to the enclosure. Sergeant Mateo Ruiz rolled out from beneath the fuselage when Evelyn approached. "You heard about Raven?" she asked. Ruiz nodded. "Everybody heard. Status of the Hind? Right gear is solid. We flushed the contaminated tank. Gearbox oil is clean. Hydraulics? Primary system holds. Auxiliary pressure drops when the controls move fast. Has anyone started it since the fuel flush? The pilot from the evaluation team tried yesterday. Couldn't get stable rotor RPM. He thought the governor was damaged. Was the right throttle friction lock still engaged? How did you know about that? The defect is common on this production block. The lock feels released when it's halfway seated. Evelyn, what exactly did you do before intelligence work? An alarm sounded from the operations tent, not the base attack alarm. The shorter signal ordered all flight personnel to report immediately. Evelyn looked toward the gorge on the map she could no longer see. Something I thought I was finished doing. Inside the tent, Holt faced every available aviator on the base. Fixed-wing pilots stood beside helicopter crews. Several had flown combat missions for more than a decade. None had been trained on a Mi-24. Raven team has 17 minutes, Holt said. The Hind can carry them, survive small arms fire, and reach the gorge before the weather closes the pass. I need someone who can put it in the air. No one answered. Price folded his arms. Colonel, volunteering doesn't make someone qualified. That cockpit is backward from ours. Different instruments, different emergency logic, different rotor response. A pilot guessing at those controls will kill himself before he clears the fence. Then give me someone who isn't guessing. Silence. The radio operator turned up Raven team's frequency. Gunfire rolled from the speaker. Someone shouted for another bandage. Holt struck the map table with his palm. Fly that Mi-24 or we die here, he ordered. Who can do it? Evelyn raised her hand. The first laugh came from a young Apache pilot near the tent entrance. It was brief and nervous, but another man answered it. Price did not laugh. His expression was worse. Controlled disbelief. "Ma'am," he said, "the colonel asked for a pilot." I heard him. "Reading captured manuals is not flying." "No," Evelyn said. "It isn't." She walked to the map table and picked up a grease pencil. On the clear plastic covering the map, she drew the shape of the Mi-24's fuel system from memory. She marked the cross-feed valve, the service tank, and the point where air collected after a contaminated tank was flushed improperly. If Sergeant Ruiz starts the APU now, the left engine will light normally. The right engine will climb to 58%, hang there and surge. Everyone will assume the governor is bad. It isn't. The throttle friction lock is half engaged. And there is probably air in this line. She tapped the drawing. Bleed it, release the lock with upward pressure, and the engine will stabilize. The laughter stopped. Price glanced toward Ruiz, who had entered behind her. Ruiz nodded once. She described exactly what happened yesterday. Holt looked at Evelyn. Name and qualification. Evelyn Mercer, former Army Chief Warrant Officer 5, rotary wing test pilot, 612 hours in Mi-24 variants, 187 at night or in reduced visibility. No one spoke. Price's arms slowly unfolded. Holt said, "There is nothing about that in your file. Not in the file you were given. When did you last fly one?" Evelyn looked through the tent opening at the waiting helicopter. 11 years ago. The young Apache pilot gave a disbelieving breath. 11 years? Evelyn faced him. The rotor turns in the same direction. Another burst of fire came through the speakers. Raven team's medic called that Nunez was losing consciousness. Holt made the decision. Mercer flies. Price goes in the forward cockpit. Price stared at him. "Sir, I've never operated the Hind's weapons system. You have the most combat time here and you know the gorge." Evelyn shook her head. "He doesn't go because he outranks everyone. He goes if he can follow instructions without fighting the aircraft or me." Several pilots looked at Price. His jaw tightened. "I can follow instructions. We'll find out." They ran for the enclosure. Ruiz already had a ground power cable connected. Mechanics rolled away ladders and inspection stands. The dark weather front swallowed the peaks beyond the base, leaving a narrow band of yellow light above the western ridge. Evelyn climbed into the rear cockpit. The smell of hydraulic fluid, canvas, and hot metal returned 11 years of memory at once. She had left the test unit to care for her dying husband and former co-pilot Daniel. After losing him, she had never found the will to return. Until now, Price's voice entered her headset from the forward cockpit. "Rear seat comcheck." Evelyn fastened her harness. "I hear you. Colonel wants wheels up in 6 minutes. Then place the battery switches. On." Oh, Price found them on. Inverters. On. Fire protection panel. Test both loops. Lights appeared across Evelyn's panel. She read their faded labels by position, color, and memory. Ruiz climbed onto the side platform and held up 2 fingers. Fuel line bled. Throttle lock released. Evelyn gave him a thumbs up. Starting APU, the small turbine whined. Needles moved and pressure rose. Left engine. Light off. Temperature rising, stable. Right engine. The second turbine coughed, and its temperature climbed too quickly. Price reached for the cutoff, but Evelyn stopped him. 2 seconds later, the temperature settled, and the rotor steadied. Outside, the huge blades accelerated. Dust spiraled through the enclosure and flattened the tents nearest the fence. Mechanics ducked behind vehicles. Then the auxiliary hydraulic warning illuminated. Evelyn tested the pedals. The pressure needle fell, recovered, then fell farther. Ruiz's voice came over the ground channel. Auxiliary pump is cavitating. Could be a cracked suction hose. Price turned in his harness. We cannot take a damaged foreign helicopter into a mountain gorge. We can isolate the auxiliary system, but if the primary fails, we lose most control assistance. Evelyn looked at the mission clock. Raven team had 11 minutes before the enemy reached the quarry. She switched the auxiliary system off, isolating the faulty pump before it could contaminate the primary hydraulics. Now we have no backup, Price said. Evelyn opened the command frequency. Falcon, Hind 1. Auxiliary hydraulics unavailable. Primary is stable. We can launch or shut down. Decide now. Holt did not hesitate. Raven has 10 minutes. Launch. Evelyn wrapped her right hand around the cyclic. She raised the collective. The Mi-24 grew light on its wheels. Price called the engine instruments. Torque matched. Temperatures normal. Rotor 95. The helicopter lifted 3 feet, yawed hard left. Hand began sliding toward the enclosure wall. Price grabbed his controls. Don't, Evelyn snapped. He released them. She countered with pedal and a small forward movement. The Hind stopped with its left wingtip, less than 6 feet from a light pole. Evelyn held the gunship, motionless in its own cloud of dust, while the pilots who had laughed watched from across the base. Tail. Rotor response is delayed, Price said. Cable stretch. I felt it. Can you compensate? The aircraft remained perfectly steady. What do you think? Evelyn pushed the nose down. The Mi-24 crossed the fence, accelerated over the empty road, and climbed toward the narrowing gap between 2 ridges. Falcon Ridge disappeared behind a wall of dust. Price unfolded a map. Direct route is 38 miles. The southern canyon adds 5 minutes. There's a dry irrigation cut west of it. It rejoins the gorge near the cement works. It isn't on the map. I studied newer satellite images. Evelyn kept the Hind 50 feet above the plane. When a radar warning tone accelerated, she dropped into the narrow cut. Price called a power line and an old stone bridge ahead. Not enough clearance, he warned. Climbing would expose them. Evelyn rolled left and slipped beside the bridge's central support, clearing stone by less than 10 feet. The warning tone slowed. The radar had lost them. When Price looked back through the mirror, the disbelief was gone from his face. Raven Team's voice cut through the radio. Falcon, enemy technical entering the south road. 2 minutes to contact, Holt answered. Raven, aircraft is 6 minutes out. So we don't have 6, Evelyn transmitted. Raven actual, Hind 1. Mark the eastern ridge with smoke and keep everyone under cover. The team leader hesitated at the sound of an unfamiliar woman's voice. Hind 1, identify. Your ride home. That's a hostile aircraft. Today it isn't. Orange panels on both cabin doors. Do not fire at the helicopter with orange panels. Copy orange panels. You said 6 minutes? Evelyn increased power. Make it 4. The cement works appeared beyond the final ridge, its silos broken and black against the storm. Darya Gorge opened behind it. Price saw muzzle flashes on the eastern shelf. Heavy gun right side, 1 o'clock. Looks like a Zu-23. The twin-barreled weapon was already turning toward them. The Mi-24 carried ammunition in its fixed cannon, but the defector had removed the firing key. Intelligence technicians had not found a replacement. Price pulled the trigger anyway. Nothing happened. Weapons are dead. I know. Then what exactly is our plan? Evelyn scanned the terrain. An old conveyor crossed the gorge between the gun position and the quarry. Rusted support towers held hundreds of feet of loose sheet metal. She turned directly toward the anti-aircraft gun. Price stared through the sight. You are flying at it. I need them to track us. They are doing an excellent job. The Zu-23 opened fire. Red tracers climbed toward the helicopter. Evelyn waited until the gunner committed to the turn, then banked behind the conveyor. Shells struck its upper frame. Old panels tore free, collapsing across the gun position in a cloud of dust and rust. She never fired a shot. Gun is masked, Price said, astonished. Not destroyed, but masked. That's all we need. The Hind crossed the gorge. Rifle rounds struck its armored belly like handfuls of gravel thrown against a steel door. Price found Raven Team near the quarry entrance. Orange smoke poured from a ledge barely wider than a truck. 8 soldiers were firing uphill, while the medic crouched over the wounded. Behind them, Samir Dalan leaned against the rock with blood on one trouser leg. "There's no landing zone," Price said. "There's a loading zone." "Where?" Evelyn pointed with the nose of the aircraft. A disused ore chute extended from the quarry wall. Its end was level with the Hind's cabin floor, but the ravine beneath it dropped more than 200 feet. "We hover beside the chute." They crossed directly into the cabin. Price studied the gusting wind. "The rotor wash will tear that platform apart. Then they should move quickly. Auxiliary hydraulics are gone. If primary pressure drops while you're holding a side hover..." "I know. You keep saying that, because you keep telling me things I know." Evelyn brought the Mi-24 alongside the quarry wall, while Price called the unseen rotor clearance. Ruiz clipped himself to a safety line and opened the cabin doors. "Raven, move," he shouted. Soldiers dragged Nunez across the flexing ore chute as bullets struck sparks from the wall. The primary hydraulic needle trembled. Price saw it. "Pressure falling. How many aboard?" Ruiz answered. 4 first litter is in." The controls grew heavier. Price reached toward his own, then stopped. "Tell me what you need." Light left pedal. No more, he obeyed, and the tail steadied. Another soldier crossed. Then the second litter. The ore chute groaned as bullets cut through one of its support cables. Ruiz shouted, "9 aboard." "Civilian is moving." The hydraulic warning flickered. "Maybe 30 seconds, Price warned. Halfway across, Delan's injured leg folded. The team leader pulled him toward the cabin while enemy fighters appeared at the quarry entrance. Price looked through the dead gun sight. 10 seconds. Ruiz leaned out and caught Darlan's jacket. The support cable snapped. The chute twisted away, leaving Darlan hanging over the ravine from Ruiz's grip. Evelyn moved the Hind sideways, matching the falling platform for one impossible second. Ruiz dragged Darlan inside. "All aboard. Go." Evelyn pulled away as the chute collapsed. The hydraulic pressure recovered when the load eased. "We're not home yet," she said. The Zu-23 emerged from beneath the fallen conveyor panels. Its barrels turned toward the departing helicopter. Price called the threat. Evelyn dropped into the gorge, using the quarry wall for cover. The first burst passed above them. The second struck the left stub wing. An alarm illuminated. "Fuel pressure number 1, Price said. Evelyn felt the left engine lose power. The helicopter yawed. She corrected before the passengers in the cabin understood what had happened. Left engine torque dropping. Temperature rising. Fuel line hit. Possibly. Price opened the emergency checklist strapped beside his seat. "The pages were in Russian. I cannot read this." "You don't need to." "Close the number 1 firewall valve." "Red guarded switch, second row," he found it. "Closed." Generator 1 off. "Crossfeed open." Price moved the switches as she called them. The left engine temperature continued climbing. "Firelight," he said. Evelyn shut the engine down. The Hind sank toward the gorge floor. With one engine, its weight was now the enemy. 11 rescued people, 3 crew members' armor, and fuel pulled it down while the surviving engine screamed at maximum power. "We're too heavy," Price said. "Ruiz, strip everything that isn't a person." In the cabin, Ruiz opened the opposite door. Soldiers pushed out empty ammunition boxes, loose armor panels taken from the captured aircraft, tool cases, and the heavy intelligence rack installed after its arrival. Hundreds of pounds disappeared into the ravine. The descent finally stopped when the gorge fell away beneath them. Evelyn lowered the nose, gaining enough speed for the stub wings to carry part of the weight. In the cabin, the medic worked on Nunez beneath a red utility light. Raven Team's leader crawled forward and connected to the intercom. "Pilot, Nunez has maybe 15 minutes. Falcon Ridge is 17 minutes on one engine. Then find 2. Evelyn looked toward the black weather swallowing the direct route. "Home, I'll find 3. She turned toward the high. Pass Price understood immediately. "The storm has closed it. The storm has hidden it. Wind at the pass was forecast above 60 knots. Forecasts are what the air was doing before we arrived. Is that something test pilots say?" "It's something Daniel used to say." Price heard the change in her voice. "Your instructor?" "My husband." The Mi-24 entered cloud. Rain turned to ice as turbulence hammered the aircraft. Price read altitude, torque, and rotor speed in a steady rhythm. For the first time since takeoff, they sounded like a crew. Lightning revealed a ridgeline ahead. "We need 200 feet, Price said. "We don't have the power, then we turn." Turning would add 4 minutes that Nunez might not have. Evelyn ordered Ruiz to jettison the remaining cannon belt and its armored container. The helicopter rose, but not enough. Evelyn reduced speed until the aircraft approached the edge of translational lift. Rotor RPM fell another point. 4 degrees below redline, Price warned. Raise the engine limit override. He stared at the guarded lever. That can destroy the turbine. In 12 minutes, it may destroy the turbine. We need it for 40 seconds. Price lifted the guard. The surviving engine gave them emergency power. Its temperature crossed the red line as the Mi-24 climbed, and its rotor slowed. The warning horn sounded. 20 feet to ridge, Price called. Ice-covered rock appeared directly ahead through the cloud. Evelyn held the power. The wheels cleared the ridge by 6 feet. On the far side, Evelyn lowered the nose and returned the override to normal. The engine temperature remained above redline. It isn't cooling, Price said. Give it time. The temperature needle began to fall. Falcon Ridge appeared through the rain 3 miles ahead. The controller cleared them to the medical pad. But Evelyn saw the hydraulic pressure falling again. Evelyn checked the hydraulic pressure. It was dropping again. Negative medical pad. We need the runway. Runway is occupied, the controller replied. Holt broke in. Clear it now, Price said. You can hover to the pad. Not with the hydraulics fading and one engine cooking. We land like an airplane. Behind them, the medic called. Nunez is crashing, Holt's voice came through the radio. Emergency team is waiting. Bring them home. Evelyn aligned with the runway. Price read the final numbers. Rotor 94. Right gear indicates down. Indication does not mean locked. At 200 feet, the hydraulic pressure entered the red. The cyclic became heavy. Evelyn used both hands. Take the pedals, she told Price. I have them. Keep the nose straight. Do not chase the gusts. The runway rushed toward them. The right gear warning flickered. Price saw it. Right gear unsafe. We're committed. The left wheels touched first. Evelyn held the damaged side up as speed bled away. Then the right gear settled, held for half a second and folded. The Mi-24 dropped onto its right stub wing and slid. Metal screamed across concrete. Price fought the pedals, while Evelyn kept the rotor disc level, preventing the blades from striking the ground. The helicopter turned, slowed, and stopped in sparks, less than 100 yards from the waiting medics. Evelyn shut down the engine. For the first time in 34 minutes, the cockpit became quiet. Then the cabin doors opened. Medics ran forward. Raven team carried Nunez from the helicopter and transferred him directly to a surgical vehicle. The second wounded soldier followed. Samir Dallan was placed on a stretcher, still holding the waterproof case containing the guidance system evidence. All 11 members of the team had returned. All of them were alive. The pilots gathered on the wet runway. None of them spoke. Price climbed the side of the damaged helicopter and looked into the rear cockpit. You said 11 years. It was. It didn't look like 11 years. Evelyn removed her helmet. Rain touched the silver in her hair. Price lowered his eyes. I should apologize for doubting an aircraft with bad hydraulics and an unknown fuel system. That was sensible. Not for that. I saw your age, your uniform, and the job written on your badge. I decided those things told me everything. When you raised your hand, I thought the answer couldn't possibly be you. Evelyn climbed down carefully. Most people don't recognize an answer that arrives in the wrong package. The young Apache pilot approached. Ma'am, I was the first one who laughed. I remember, he swallowed. I'm sorry. Evelyn handed him her helmet. Carry that to intelligence. Colonel Holt arrived from the medical vehicle. Nunez has a pulse. Surgeons think he'll make it. Holt then revealed what her sealed record contained. Evelyn had trained 41 pilots on captured aircraft and co-written the emergency procedure Price had used after the engine hit. Why did you never tell me? Holt asked. You asked me to analyze foreign flight record, she replied. Knowing when to use what you learn is part of that job. 6 weeks later, Samir Dallan's evidence helped authorities disable the guidance network before it could be used against civilian aircraft. The Mi-24 never flew again. Engineers later discovered that its auxiliary hydraulic line had been sabotaged before it reached Falcon Ridge. Evelyn had flown it anyway. Evelyn later designed a new foreign aircraft training course. Major Price sat in the front row on its first morning as she wrote one question on the board. Who here knows how to fly this? Evelyn turned toward them. The most dangerous word in that question is not fly, she said. It is who. Because the moment you decide what the right person must look like, you stop seeing everyone who does not fit the picture. No one laughed. Months later, a photograph reached Evelyn's office. Raven team stood outside the hospital, with Sergeant Nunez alive in the center. Price had written one line on the back. "We asked for a pilot," a warrior answered. Evelyn placed it beside an older photograph of Daniel. For 11 years, she had believed her life in the sky had ended. Now she knew that skill could sleep, and courage could grow quiet without disappearing. And sometimes, when every trained pilot remained silent, and the distance between life and death was measured in minutes, the person everyone overlooked was the only one prepared to raise her hand. If this story held your attention, subscribe to Warthog Valor Stories for more stories of courage, sacrifice, and the heroes no one sees coming.